Royal Reviewer live channel episode. This is a live chat, and I will be reviewing or giving my opinion on the final two episodes of The Crown, which are 9 and 10, and they are called Avalanche and War, so very ominous for the season finale. So I'll give you my opinion of that in a moment. As always, this is a live chat, so I will be answering as many viewer comments and questions and reading things out as possible. Also, if you remember anything, if you're watching live and you're in the chat room, if you remember anything that I may have missed from an episode, then jog my memory. It's been probably about a week and a half since I watched the final episode of 10. So I watched Avalanche episode 9 probably 2 weeks ago, and then I watched War about a week and a half ago. So I kind of need my mind jogging as well. So I'm going to start by reading the synopsis of Avalanche and also War, and then we'll kind of just talk about them. So also I'm going to ask you a question at the start. Were you satisfied by season 4? Did it meet expectations? Was there anything you really liked, didn't like? I'll be reading comments in a moment. Right, I can see people dropping in. So let's go straight away to the synopsis of Avalanche. So, at a gala organised by the Royal Opera House in honour of Charles's birthday, Diana surprises the audience by taking to the stage and performing a duet to Uptown Girl, prompting Charles to resent her popularity. They both leave on a ski trip to Switzerland, but return after surviving an avalanche, obviously the title of this episode, that kills her friend Hugh Lindsay. When Elizabeth learns both Charles and Diana have been unfaithful, she and Philip attempt to get the couple to reconcile. At a meeting, Diana promises to remain faithful while Charles is not given a chance to speak. Anne later tells Charles he should not be delusional about his affair, and Camilla tells him they should be realistic about their relationship. As Charles keeps ignoring Diana, she resumes her affair with James Hewitt. Right, there's a lot to take in there, so let's kind of go back and dissect this final episode. So, it is true that a lot of people are talking about, the things in The Crown, this series, that are true, not true. It is true that Diana did kind of plan a performance of Uptown Girl, and she kind of planned that as Charles's birthday surprise. What we don't know, so they got that bit right, where Diana went on stage and danced and performed to Uptown Girl. What we don't know is Charles's reaction. We don't know what went on behind closed doors, and I don't think that they are basing Charles's reaction, which was negative in the series of The Crown, on anything factual, on any kind of factual account that I've seen anyway. So if you have seen or heard of where a source information has said that Charles took it badly, let me know and I will take a look at it. But as far as I'm aware, there isn't any actual basis for that. But what we do know is that Diana was hugely popular at a time when it was kind of believed within the royal family that the kind of star of the show should be those in direct line of succession. So it was very, very much back in those days that the person marrying into the family should kind of complement the kind of main star, if you like. So we have had all the way back from the start of this series that kind of conflict between Diana's popularity and probably where Charles thinks that he should be. So again, it's exploring that theme, but we do not know private conversations, what happened and what went on. So the next part, they both leave on a ski trip to Switzerland, but return after surviving an avalanche, which is actually quite brief. And the whole avalanche story wasn't really covered in that much depth. It did actually happen. There was an avalanche. It was feared at one point that Charles had been taken. Again, we saw a scene back at the palace where the Queen was informed and was kind of really worried about what had happened to Charles. Like I said, it did actually happen, and I'm trying to remember where I read about it in detail. I think it was Ken Worth's book about guarding and protecting Diana. Ken Worth was her protection officer for a number of years. And I think it was in one of his first books that he recalled this whole episode. And it was very, very worrying for Diana. Diana did kind of hear this avalanche. And then she didn't know for a certain amount of time whether or not Charles had actually been injured in this avalanche. So I think The Crown kind of swept over the avalanche a bit. We kind of saw this kind of scene where, an avalanche was happening, but it didn't kind of almost put it in context. I don't know. Anyway, I felt like they kind of skirted over the whole drama of the avalanche, but there's a lot to get through. So, you can kind of forgive them a little bit. The avalanche did kill Diana's friend, Hugh Lindsay. So they got those factual bits right. The next part, when Elizabeth learns that both Charles and Diana have been unfaithful, she and Philip attempt to get the couple to reconcile. Well, again, this is part where I think the Crown has taken some artistic license. So we don't know if ever the Queen and Prince Philip got wind of what was going on. We don't know if they were aware of it. We don't know if they had these kind of meetings and conversations. It's not without the realm of possibility that it could have gone that way. But again, it's kind of showing the conflict, that conflict between Charles and Diana, which of course ultimately would never get resolved. Two characters in a way very, very much the same, kind of needing the same, not being able to give what each other wants to each other, doomed, if you like, from the beginning. And if you want to hear what I've said about this in previous episodes, go back and watch all of my review series of The Crown and you'll get my full views on that. So at this meeting that we don't know actually happened, Diana promises to remain faithful while Charles is not given a chance to speak. Again, we don't know that happened. We don't know it went that way. As far as I'm aware, there's no source information or account from people at the time to say that actually happened. So if you know of anything, let me know. I'll take a look. Princess Anne later tells Charles he should not be delusional about his affair. I think, although I said earlier that maybe the Queen and Philip weren't aware, I don't think they knew in that kind of level of detail. I think they probably knew that he was seeing Camilla. There's one account where Philip says about taking mistresses. Again, we don't know kind of how true that is, but I think Charles in the Crown version is very much depicted as seeing the relationship with Camilla as something more than what it could have ever have been at that point. I think in the Crown, the Crown's version of Charles sees possibly divorcing Diana, marrying Camilla straight away. And of course that was never going to happen, and I don't think that he would have felt or thought that that would have happened, because what we know in reality is that even though Diana and Charles's marriage had broken down just after Harry had born, and basically they had separated, they were living separate lives, they had decided to carry on. Even after the separation was announced in Parliament, it was still believed that they would that Charles would still inherit the throne and Diana would still be queen, although live separate lives, and Charles would have his mistress Camilla. So yeah, that's kind of how it panned out in real life versus how Charles was seeing things, I think, in The Crown. Apparently Anne later tells Charles, like I said, that he should not be delusional, which is kind of quite a nice scene, but we don't know if that was actually true or not. As Charles keeps ignoring Diana, she resumes her affair with James Hewitt. We do know that that was on and off. And we saw a scene where Diana was trying to kind of sneak him into the palace. Charles had in the Crown version, had spies set up to kind of relay him information, almost trying to look for an excuse to divorce Diana, when he himself was carrying on with Camilla. So I can see, now that I've got to this episode, how people are kind of seeing this portrayal of Charles very, very negatively. But what I will say is, we don't know that that actually happened. We don't know that Charles had set up people within Kensington Palace to spy on Diana. It was almost like an open secret anyway. Everyone, pretty much in that field knew about Charles and Camilla. I think people knew about Diana and her lovers as well. Princess Margaret did say that she would hear the grate at Kensington Palace being kind of driven over, so she knew when Diana was, having people over or not. Did I say Princess Margaret? I think I did say Princess Margaret. So, and that's kind of how that episode ended, almost kind of setting up for this final episode. I'm going to go back and read the comments about this one. If you think I've missed anything about Avalanche, type it now and I'll discuss it, or else we'll move on to episode 10 and the series finale. Carmen says, I really missed Sarah and Anne's kidnapping situation. Yeah, they definitely missed out that whole period of the kidnapping of Princess Anne. I think it was done for matters of timescales. I don't think there was particularly a lot happening in that period apart from Princess Anne's. So I think they just kind of skirted over it. It was something important that happened. I agree. I would have loved to have seen them portray it, but we didn't get to see that. So it's one of those things that maybe could be recreated in the future. Maybe it could be like a when like a cutback. So maybe Princess Anne could be recounting the story in a future episode of when it happened, and we could have a flashback. That's what I'm looking for, the word flashback. Maybe it could be in a flashback scenario. Maybe. I'm just putting it out there. Mason says, I loved season 4 as well. Well, I'll tell you if I loved it at the end of the review. Kelly says, you're wearing the fringe tiara. I am wearing the fringe tiara, the same one that Beatrice borrowed off the Queen for her wedding. James Med 4 says, the Queen Mother was always popular way back to when she was Duchess of York. She had, I think, the common touch. Even though she was a member of the aristocracy, she had that touch that, mothers, housewives could relate to, even though she had never lived the life of, an ordinary woman. I mean, she could never have been called an ordinary woman, but she had that feel about her that wasn't too pretentious, too haughty. She could relate to people, I think, to ordinary mothers, wives, and people. And as she got older, she became the nation's grandmother, so to speak, which a position now occupied very much in the minds of the public by the Queen. Aries says, I love the Prime Minister. Gillian Anderson's portrayal of Margaret Thatcher, I think, was really, really good. I think it was a good casting, even though obviously she was at the time going out with the series creator, which may have been a reason why she got the job, but it worked out perfectly because she was the right person to do that job at that time, portray that role, and I did love the characterization. Some people have said that she lacked some of the Prime Minister's compassion. Those within the Thatcher inner circle may well know about the kind of compassion that she had, but I think on the outside looking in at Thatcher, perhaps we the people didn't really see that much compassion from Margaret Thatcher. But I think Gillian Anderson portrayed it really, really well. Do excuse me while I just take a sip of my tea. So, I'm going to move on before I talk about the final thing, my final thoughts on season 4. I'm going to talk about episode 10, which is War, the finale. So Thatcher finds her leadership challenged after the Deputy Prime Minister Geoffrey Howe tenders his resignation in Parliament. Determining to dissolve Parliament, she asked Elizabeth for her support, but is advised to do nothing. Thatcher later steps down as Prime Minister and receives the rare honour of the Order of Merit. Charles, having learned that Diana is still seeing James Hewitt, plans to move forward with a separation, while Diana, despite doubts about her capability to carry a solo trip, travels to New York on a Concorde and charms the public. Observing Diana's popularity via television, Camilla tells Charles she's afraid of being subjected to public shame if their affair is discovered. Charles then takes out his anger on Diana upon her return. When the family gathers for Christmas, Charles corners Elizabeth, who berates him for his immaturity and ingratitude about his privilege before forbidding him from going through with either a separation or divorce. Philip tells Diana she is not the only one suffering, advises her to concentrate her efforts on serving Elizabeth, and warns her not to let her marriage fail. Right, again, a lot to get through and dissect and break down. So, this final episode sees the demise and the end of Margaret Thatcher. This whole series, season, whatever you want to call it, has been following very, very much three women. Diana, the Queen, Margaret Thatcher. We saw kind of Thatcher being elected in the very first episode, and now we see her demise. Geoffrey Howe, this did actually happen. Geoffrey Howe did tender his resignation and basically started this kind of downward spiral for Margaret Thatcher, of which she eventually lost the confidence vote, and she resigned, basically, as we saw in this episode. But just as this is kind of starting to happen, in the Crown version, she asks Elizabeth for her support, but is advised to do nothing. Now, in the Crown version, we see this happening during one of their meetings. And as we know, the weekly meetings between Prime Minister and Monarch are strictly private. The Prime Minister did not write about this, as far as I'm aware, in her memoirs. This kind of Monarch Prime Minister confidence is pretty much strictly kept. The only person who's kind of given away a few little nuggets and slips here and there has been David Cameron. As far as I'm aware, every other Prime Minister has kind of kept this kind of unwritten sacred bond of privacy between Monarch and Prime Minister. So, I have no idea where they got that from the Crown, but it did make for an interesting scene. It kind of shows again the kind of differences between the two women. Elizabeth, kind of known for doing nothing, and in so doing nothing, actually does a lot. By doing nothing, it's kind of stable. Margaret Thatcher kind of, puts across the point that being a politician is very different. And of course, this is true. The whole theme is very, very true. The premise is true. Being a politician is very, very different to being a monarch. Being a monarch, you are there for life unless you abdicate. You see prime ministers come and go. With a politician, a prime minister, everything is political. All decisions are looked at very, very differently, almost like a game of chess. Having a monarch as the head of state is one of the benefits, is that it's not political. You are presiding over everything. So you have that continuity, you have that stability. Whereas, as Margaret Thatcher was experiencing, she didn't have the luxury of stability or continuity, because everything was political for her in her world. So you see that the differences between a constitutional monarch and the constitutional monarch's prime minister, or elected leader, so to speak. So I thought that was a very interesting scene, even though we didn't actually know what was said actually happened. So let's kind of park that for a moment. Anyway, eventually Thatcher steps down and is surprised that the Queen actually kind of rather likes Thatcher, I think, in the Crown version, and is presented the Order of Merit. Now, this did actually happen. She was presented with the Order of Merit. Again, we don't know, which is in the Queen's gift to give. So it indicates that the Queen actually felt rather favourably about Thatcher. Of course, her first female Prime Minister. Basically it kind of indicates that the Queen did actually think something of Margaret Thatcher. And of course, the country was very, very different from where it was when Thatcher came to power. I don't want to get too much into politics. Some people are going to really, really love what Thatcher did. Some people really hate it. But one of the things that most people can't dispute is that in terms of the economy, the country was completely different. It was completely kind of revolutionised. Some might say for the good, some might say for the poorer, but it was completely different. Britain had been transformed during that period. So I thought that was quite a nice little touching scene to have. Back to Charles and Diana. Having learned that she's still seeing James Hewitt, plans to move forward with a separation. And I mean, again, we don't know if that was actually true. What we do know in reality is that, as I said earlier, the couple did not separate, particularly that point. So again, probably a bit of artistic license. Diana, of course, embarked on a solo tour. Again, we saw a scene where Diana was sat one side of the table, Charles on the other. I think that was kind of done to signify this kind of war of the Waleses, which I think might be tackled in season 5. So we kind of saw this kind of divide, and what better way to have a divide than a big massive table in the middle. So Diana embarked on this tour. Charles thought that she would fail. Of course, as we all saw, it was a great rip-roaring success. People in America absolutely loved Diana. We saw little clips of, Americans, United States citizens, New Yorkers talking about Diana, and that did actually happen. Those newsreels kind of did come back. Diana flew on Concorde, again true. I think it was Ken Worth's book again that kind of spoke about Diana travelling regularly on Concorde. In the Crown version, Charles observed Diana's popularity on TV and also did Camilla. In the Crown version, Camilla tells Charles that she's afraid of being subjected to public shame. We don't know that actually happened. We don't know Camilla's thoughts on that. That is artistic license. But what we do know is that in later years, once the public did find out about their affair, that Camilla was viciously vilified. She was hounded, she was trashed in the papers daily. It was a very, very bad time for Camilla. And, she just kind of, she carried on. She carried on carrying on. She was this kind of stoic British personality. She did have that resolve. She does have stiff upper lip. She just got on with it. And what we don't know is privately what kind of a toll that took on Camilla. But she battled through, and I think that's what that kind of scene was kind of alluring to. Perhaps in season 5 we might get a little taste of how the press actually hounded Camilla during that period. So I think that was kind of pertaining to that. So in the Crown version, Charles takes his anger out on Diana upon her return. Again, we don't know that actually happened, but I can see again in this episode why people have such a negative opinion of Charles, because the way the Crown portrayed him in that scene was absolutely shocking and appalling. The way he spoke to Diana, it was just, it was kind of, it was evil. It was uncomfortable to watch. But again, I will stress that we do not know that conversation took place. We do not know that Charles ever said anything like that to Diana. As far as I'm aware, there's no first person account where Diana told someone that happened, or there was somebody that witnessed it. So I do think that was just artistic license, and we shouldn't judge somebody upon an artistic license piece about them. And that's one of the controversial things about this series of The Crown, is that it's getting closer in time to where we are today. It's dealing with people that are still alive. And that's where this whole furore about should The Crown disclaim that it is a work of fiction. A lot of people have called for the Netflix to put kind of a warning on the series to say that it's a work of fiction. It's no more a work of fiction than all the other series that have gone before, but I think it's particularly sensitive this time around because it's dealing with people that are still alive. And it's kind of getting closer to the present day. And when you portray somebody in a negative way based upon something that is artistic license, it can kind of, change people's opinions. It can kind of form people's opinions when they might not realise that it's taking that much artistic license as what it has done. And having got to episode 9 and 10, I can see why now people were kind of vilifying Charles and Camilla. That scene did not make Charles look good in any way, shape or form. But I stress, we do not know that actually happened or that actually took place. What we do know is that the affair did happen. The affair was continuing. as was Diana's with James Hewitt, kind of on and off, and various other lovers as well. So, the scene kind of ends with a family gathering at Sandringham for Christmas. We see Fergie. By the way, I love the actress who plays Fergie. Kind of just captures that early Fergie really, really well. In the episode, Charles corners the Queen, who berates him for his immaturity and ingratitude before forbidding him to go through with either a separation or divorce. Oh, my goodness, again, we don't know that happened. There is no first-hand account that happened. And I can see why people are kind of saying that the Queen was kind of quite remote in this series. We don't know that happened. Again, that's another kind of artistic license piece. I think the makers of The Crown were trying to explain probably, or kind of make sense of why Diana and Charles's marriage didn't end then, why it was kind of stretched out. I think they were kind of assuming that the royal family kind of wanted them to continue. But what it fails to tackle is that actually Diana and Charles themselves wanted it to work in terms of that they wanted things to carry on for the sake of the children, carry on for the sake of the succession, carry on for the sake of their work, of the family, of duty, of everything. There were lots of reasons for things to carry on and to kind of continue living those separate lives. So I think they kind of got this angle a little bit wrong. I think actually the reason why they didn't separate to divorce at that point was because they themselves wanted it to carry on. Perhaps there was a glimmer of hope from both of them that things could kind of reconcile, but what we do know from history, from reality, is that even though we don't know the what, fors and whys, they did carry on for a certain amount of time separated, and like I said, it was always anticipated until the Queen did actually not decree, but she kind of advised them eventually to divorce after the Andrew Morton book, which I think might be explored in season 5, I'm hoping. We get the Queen then advising Charles and Diana to divorce. But at that point, I don't think there was this kind of staunch from the family that they were forbidden to divorce. I think that very much came from Charles and Diana themselves. Also, perhaps Camilla. I think at that point, Camilla was still quite, still satisfied with being the other woman, with being discreet, with being the mistress. We saw in this episode Charles referencing her aunt, one of her past aunts, Alice Keppel, who was also a royal mistress. So I think, my own personal opinion is I don't think Camilla ever coveted being queen. To a certain extent, I think Camilla, feels almost a little bit aghast at the position she now finds herself in. Although she's settled into it, she's settled into the role now, and I think she's kind of, on course to be a great and stable queen, to, almost like a rock. Almost the same way that Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was to her husband, George VI. Very much a rock. I think George VI and Charles have very similar personalities. They need a kind of strong and powerful and stable woman behind them. That's what Charles has in Camilla. So yeah, I don't think Camilla ever coveted that kind of top spot. And certainly around this period, I think she was very, very much happy to still very much be in the background. As long as she had Charles, she was okay. I think she was quite happy for Diana to have the limelight. I think she was quite happy for Diana to be the bearer of the heirs. I think she was happy for Diana still to go on to be queen. Perhaps we'll see something changing in series 5. There's a scene at Sandringham where Diana won't come down at Christmas, and Philip goes up to see her and tells her she's not the only one suffering. Again, I think this, although we don't know that actually happened, we do know that Diana didn't particularly like Sandringham or Balmoral. in terms of, kind of these kind of big family gatherings round about this time. We do know that Philip and Diana were both kind of outsiders marrying into the family. In that respect, had a lot in common, but very different personality types. So although we don't know this conversation took place, we do know from source accounts that Diana and Philip did have correspondence, and they did have quite positive correspondence. Philip did often, give support, lend his advice to Diana. So that bit they kind of got right, although we don't know that actual conversation took place or what was said actually took place. But the whole theme of Philip kind of being supportive of Diana was true. Which is why it still amazes me today when people come up with these wild conspiracy theories that Philip had a hand in Diana's passing. Nobody supported Diana within that family more than Philip. He wanted things to work and succeed. Like I say, I think he probably could see similarities, but very, very different personality types. And there we go. That's kind of where it all ended, where it kind of wrapped up in the season finale. I'm going to go now and read some of the comments, because as I've been talking, there'll probably be quite a lot of comments to read. Talicia loved the whole season. I'll get to that in a moment, but I did like it. Speech Val says, what kind of tea am I drinking? It's just basic supermarket Sainsbury's own brand red label tea. I do like that one. Stephanie says, what do you think made Charles and Diana's relationship so volatile? Do you think it's possible that they both wanted out? I think they both wanted it to work, which is why it was kind of stretched out for so long. People that want it over really quickly, get out quick. I think they both kind of wanted it to work, but it kind of wasn't. Whenever they tried, it didn't work. I think I've spoke about this before, but I think what made their relationship doomed, or so volatile as you put it, was because they're actually both very similarly, can't say that word, but they're both damaged in the same way. They both had mental health issues which never really got mended within their lifetimes, relating to their childhoods. Charles very, very much felt a sense of not abandonment, but kind of a sense of abandonment from his parents, being away a lot on tours. He turned very, very much to the Queen Mother for his support network. Charles, I don't think, had a particularly happy childhood. I don't think he had a particularly happy schooling either at Gordonston. Diana very much felt abandoned by her mother. She said she was haunted by her footsteps crunching on the gravel as she left. And I think both of them were damaged personalities. And when you are a damaged personality, you often need a partner that can give you the strength, the attention, the adoration, the fulfillment, the encouragement that you need, because you've got this kind of gap that almost needs propping up. When you both need the same kind of thing, you both can't be that rock for your partner. So I think it was doomed from the start because of that reason. I actually think Camilla is a bit of a red herring, because if Charles hadn't got that support from Camilla, who was actually quite happy to be low key, he'd have got it from somewhere else, because that's what he needed. What I think is the ultimate shame is that Diana never got to find her rock. Who knows, if she'd have lived, if that terrible accident hadn't happened, perhaps now, today, we would see a happy, contented, supported, fulfilled Diana with a partner that can give her what she needs. The same as Charles has his partner in Camilla. So, but unfortunately, things didn't go that way. So it's easy to make a victim, to villainize Charles and Camilla, when actually, he was damaged, Diana was damaged. Luckily, he found someone who could give him that support. Diana, unfortunately, whose life was cut short, didn't get to that point. But that's how it panned out. So I can understand why people kind of say these things, but Camilla, I think, is a bit of a red herring in the whole situation. Lauren says, I do worry the series may have opened old wounds. It definitely has, and it's definitely brought a new audience who perhaps didn't know the history to the history, but the way that they've packaged it is a little bit misleading, basically. Betsy says it's historical fiction. Yeah. Right. Betsy, which bit of Diana, I have watched Diana in her own words, and which bit did she say? Because I can't remember that bit. Let's go down again. Lauren says, question is, can we believe the interviews Diana did after the recent revaluations? Yeah, Diana was gaslighted by Martin Bashir, as it turns out, with all these kind of fake documents and fake bank statements. So when she was doing those interviews for the Andrew Morton book, she was looking at things through a very different prism, if you like. So I can see where you're coming from, but the things that she said, like she recalled the time when she did have lunch with Camilla. Those kinds of things did happen, but the reason for why she was doing that interview was because she'd basically been gaslit and frauded into doing it, cajoled almost, scared into doing it. Lacey says, Charles and Camilla hurt Harry and William with their actions. Yeah, undoubtedly they did. Christine says, I believe Diana, Charles was never in love with her. I think Charles was always in love with Camilla. I think in the early days there was something. I think he had feelings for Diana, but no, I think you're probably quite right. I don't think he truly loved Diana. I think his heart was always elsewhere, and it's just a terrible tragedy that things people weren't allowed back then to kind of marry for love. Fortunately, things have changed now. Lauren says, sadly, I think in the engagement photo call when he said, yes, whatever love is, yeah, whatever love means, he said, should have ended there and then. And Diana herself said that she thought that was a really strange comment, and it kind of, shook her a little bit. Lacey said, the Queen is such a great example of monarchy. It seems like such a shame that Charles will inherit the throne. His lifestyle is not fit to be the head of the Church of England. Unfortunately, we are not a morality police. The monarchy is not a morality police. It's not Big Brother. It's not the X Factor or whatever it might be where you can vote people off based on popularity. There is a set order, a set precedent, and that is what you get. There have been plenty of... Think about Henry VIII. Plenty of other people who may have had questionable morality, but still, they remained monarch. And there is no chance of the monarchy skipping a generation. That's not going to happen. The Queen will continue until her dying breath, then it will be Charles, and then I think the future is quite secure with William and Catherine. Lauren says, thank you to Betsy, I just think it was a coupling that was never going to work. Yeah. Betsy says, I agree he could have found a better match. She had so much emotional fragility, although he did too. Though she had beauty and amazing charisma. They both had a certain degree of fragility. Lauren says, also, I think because people did not talk about mental health then, that made it worse. Yeah, it was not the open conversation that it is today. Betsy says, I still believe Charles will make a great king. He deserves another chance. Kimberly says, don't you think Her Majesty could have helped more? Well, we don't know that she didn't. We don't know what level of help that her and Philip did give. That there is no first-hand account of actually how much they did or didn't do. Lauren says, I have no issue with him being king at all, but any issue with Camilla being queen, sadly, I think the people will do that. As I've said before, again, Camilla is a bit of a red herring, but in terms of being queen, there is no provision for her to be anything else other than queen. Um, Current law is that the wife of a king is a queen consort. That law has not been changed. There has been no proposals put forward to change that law. There's been no instruments or anything put in place to provide for the wife of the king being known as anything other than queen consort. So my prediction is that probably the day after Charles is kind of proclaimed and hailed king, I think it will be announced that Camilla will be queen consort. And I think people are going to have to lump it, well, like it or lump it, basically, because that's what the law says. Laura says, the ones I really feel sorry for is William and Harry, because they had to see it fall outside. Yeah, I mean, that was their reality. Lauren says, let's just hope things have changed now. I mean, they do allow marriage more freely. Now, sadly, it seems that also comes with issues. I think marrying into the royal family, whatever background you come from, aristocratic, royal, a regular, a commoner, as you and I are known, it all has issues. Being a royal is very, very different to being a private individual. People marrying in, doesn't matter how prepared they think they are, it's a very, very different life. It's a very, very different way of looking at things. There's lots of things you gain, and there's lots of things that you give up. You can't have everything. You can't kind of, be adored and have all lavish everything, and kind of, have your cake and eat it. There's certain things that you can't do. There's certain parameters you have to work within. It's not for everybody, and it's tough and it's hard. Lauren says it's a shame fairy tales are not real. Yeah, of course, the wedding was hailed as the fairy tale wedding, and it ended like a fairy tales often do, in disaster. Stephanie says, I think Charles will be a great king and a real world leader. And you love Diana and like Camilla. Yeah, it's not a competition. You can like both for different reasons. Lauren says, law or no law, sadly they will still be people with issue, which could be maybe damaging to the monarchy. There's always people with issues about everything. Mercury Angel says, as much as I enjoyed The Crown, I do feel a sense of sadness for those who cannot say anything about their loved ones. As we grow older, we all acknowledge the mistakes we made. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is kind of, it's old news. A lot of it is not new stuff, which is, for people who have known about what's gone on for a very, very long time, it's nothing new. People kind of think, well, what is all the fuss over? But there are people out there that are discovering the kind of the whole kind of War of the Waleses and the scandals of the 90s for the very first time. So we also have to remember that. But if you go by how The Crown depicts it, it's not always completely accurate or truly representative. Laura says, because divorce is very hard on children, I know my parents divorced when I was a young child. Yeah, I get that. It is, and it can cause issues. It can cause problems. It can people can have delayed trauma, shall we say? People can have trauma that's felt at the time that just continues into adult life. So yeah, I get that. Right. So what did I think as a package about series 4? Very different to series 1, 2, and 3, as I've said, because it's dealing with more up-to-date stuff. It's people that are largely still alive, still around, almost, things that people around today can remember. A lot of people can remember actually happening, which makes it a little bit more sensitive. And I think is the reason why most people, royal biographers, reporters, maybe the people involved themselves, want it to be right. They want it to be accurate. But The Crown has never tried to be a documentary. It's always been, a televisual series that's kind of a work of fiction. The issue, of course, was should should the later series, so from this season, season 4, 5, 6, if there is going to be a 6, should they be labelled as works of fiction just because they're dealing with more up-to-date things that are happening, or should the creators try to be a lot more accurate? I understand that sometimes artistic license is needed to bring a story along, to explore themes. I think the whole season is good if you look at it in terms of themes. The themes are quite good, the themes are quite well represented, but the detail, the conversation might not be true. And as long as you remember that, then I think it was actually a very good, a very watchable adaptation of loosely what happened. Some of the timescales were a little bit off, but yeah, I think as a whole I enjoyed it, and I think it was good. I loved Emma Corrin's portrayal of Diana. All the casting in general was just really, really superb. So yeah, I just absolutely liked it. I loved Gillian Anderson's portrayal of Margaret Thatcher. Mercury Angel says, don't know if putting a disclaimer will help, even those reality shows are scripted somewhat. Yeah, I mean, I agree, but at least it acknowledges formally that at least they're trying to make an effort to tell people that, it's still a production, it's still something that there is some level of artistic license in. Betsy says the production values are first class. I can't wait for the next series. The cinematography, some of those, especially, I remember which episode it was, but there was, I think it was one of the early ones, Balmoral with the deer. Stunning cinematography. I thought the production value was amazing, and I can't wait for the next series. So, I'm going to wrap up my review of this series here. But that's not it. I am going to do one more episode live chat talking about The Crown. And that is, I'm going to talk about everything we currently know about the next season, season 5. So I'll be talking about cast, release date, time period, and everything that you need to know. I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I will pop on and do a live chat talking about the upcoming season 5, what we can expect, the kind of, what themes we think might be explored, and again, the kind of time period. Speech Val says, to be honest, I'm just started binge watching, and you agree with the cinematography. It was amazing. Gypsy Camille says, I'm ignorant about the English royalty, but I like the series. I hope next season we get to hear more about Prince Philip and the Queen Mother. There is going to be a whole new different cast, so we'll talk about that in a moment. Right, I'm going to go now. I hope you've enjoyed this review, and especially this series of reviews. If you have, please give it a big old thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and of course subscribe to the channel. So, from me in Shropshire, mwah to you all, and goodbye.